Jealous? You guys jealous? These are. I feel like the less they make of these, the bigger they're gonna be. Well, remember they used to give it like the really small ones?
Well, they used to be this big, and now they're actually making them full.
You see that in the corner? Remember? There's the Rogue One. Didn't we start dating like right when we started dating history. Right when Force Awakens came out? So that Rogue One poster, we got it together. I think it was at the same theater that we went and saw this.
Was it at Glendora?
Glendora, I think it was because I remember seeing the standee. Yeah, and they had Z Pizza. There was a pizza spot there that's sadly gone. But if you guys couldn't already tell from the posters and the shirts, we went and saw Across the Spider-Verse. And seeing as that we both saw the movie, there was some really interesting reception to the reaction to the Spider-Man 2 gameplay reaction. What was it? 11,000 views, a shit ton of likes. We made it onto two reaction compilations. I actually kind of found by accident.
I mean, all you see is this stupid picture is hideous.
So I proposed to her. It's probably the only proposal I'm going to make in the next few years. Do you want to be in this review? Since we're both going to go see the movie. And so now here we are. So we're going to be doing a quick spoiler-free discussion. No spoilers, no major plot points of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. We watched it in IMAX. And it's one of the few times where seeing a movie in IMAX, it does kind of wear you out. If you suffer from seizures,
Don't
I would probably say that this is probably not a movie to see in IMAX. Probably watch it in a smaller format. So, Across the Spider-Verse, sequel to my favorite movie of 2019, beating out Infinity War at the very last second because it came out in December, Into the Spider-Verse, and also one of my favorite Spider-Man movies and one of my favorite animated movies, period. And here we are 5 years. It got a little delayed, a little sidetracked, not only because of the COVID pandemic, amongst a couple of other things, and it finally got pushed to this year, but we are going to get a whopping twofer. And this was already announced, so this is not a spoiler, but we are intended to get a trilogy with part 2 here and then part 3 next year. And this one with Across the Spider-Verse, again, this is the spoiler-free section, and I'm like, there's no really easy way to define the synopsis of this movie, because right when it starts, we're actually treated to some things that I'm like, the trailer does not tell you. And it's funny because if you go back and watch some of those trailers, they barely touch on the story.
You feel like it does spoil it for you a little bit, and you're like, you think that it's going to spoil it for you, and you're like, oh, I already have an idea of what's going to happen, da-da-da-da-da. But then once you watch it, you're like, oh, there's more to it than what's the trailer is telling you. Way more. Even towards the end, what happened, you're like, oh, it opens up so many more windows than when you thought was there. The multiverse.
The movie starts, and sometimes you even wonder if again, keeping it spoiler free, you even wonder, is Miles going to be the main character? You're like, there's so much happening that it's just like, is he even going to be our main focal point at this point?
They just, I don't know, the way they opened it and all these characters, and it was just incredible. I like the way they handled it a lot. Like,
in terms of making sure that nobody got overshadowed or anything like that?
Yes, I liked all that, because they had, like, it shows all these characters in here, all these different people that are going to be probably later. Mm-hmm. And it just opens all these, like, oh my god, this is all these stories for these people here, these people there. It's just incredible.
Now, here's the thing. If you're probably hearing us right now and going, well, what is the plot? The most vague way I can say it is that it does further push the concept of the multiverse. You know that Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, and then all of these other variations of Spider-Man are going to factor in. And I'm simply just going to comment on what you do see in the trailer, where you do see the return of Peter B. Parker, you see Gwen Stacy, you see that something involving Jefferson Davis, aka Miles' dad, plays into how things are supposed to go down, but Miles keeps them from going down. And therefore Miguel is saying, what are you doing? You're screwing everything up in terms of the multiverse. Or in this case, the Spider-Verse. That's really the surface level of what's happening, but there are some other things, specifically a couple of other characters that you probably saw in the trailer, and they are shown in the trailer. But I don't want to comment more on that, because in the trailer, they're played up for jokes.
Yes.
In the movie, you're like,
There's more to them.
Well, damn. Yeah, there's certain frames we're gonna look at differently. There's certain frames from the first movie we're gonna look at differently and go like, you really did that. You really took something that it's just so inconsequential in the first movie, and now we're gonna look at it and go, well, damn it. And there's some action figures that I'm probably gonna go and get now that I didn't get, and now I'm looking at this figure going, I'm probably gonna pick you up now because
you kind of think, I think you kind of have one already, don't you?
Of the particular character we're thinking about? No, yes. I don't. I skipped it.
I remember you did. You were like,
I was like, I don't know. Yes, and now that I've seen the movie, I'm like, I think I might have to go back and buy that figure. There's just so many other spider people happening within the lobby, as they call it, and all these other things that are...
Your eyes are like this.
That...
You feel like your eyes should be bigger than what...
And again, we saw it in IMAX, so the fact that we're still looking at we're pretty certain that we missed some things.
And we haven't even talked about this the whole way. We were like, we're not going to talk about this. We're going to wait until the video because we knew that, especially when we get to the spoiler part, it's just going to, it blows up. Like you're literally, it's like you're a kid again watching this comic book movie.
Yeah, and it, much like the first movie, does feel like an ode.
Yes.
An homage to just the concept of Spider-Man and why we love Spider-Man so much. It retains that from the first movie. And what it also still retains is that in case you were nervous that it was just going to be pure fan service, because a good example of a movie that is non-stop fan service, but I could see people's arguments about whether or not it's a good movie fundamentally if you were to strip away the fan service, and now I've kind of come around to being like, yeah, it's a pretty average movie, is the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Because if you take away some of the calls to remember this from this game, remember this... It's kind of a standard story.
They just kind of gave us a lot of, remember that when we were kids, but
yeah,
that was...
Yeah, I still enjoy it, but, I'm not going to... If someone says, it's not that great of a movie, I'll be like, I can't fight you.
We acknowledged it. We knew it was a kid's movie. It was fun, but we knew what it was. It was a big memento to us growing up, but it was a kid's movie.
That was a kid's movie. This is not a kid's movie.
No,
it's a family movie. We can take the whole family to go see it. But it's not a kid's movie for two reasons. One, it's 2 hours and 16 minutes. I was telling you this. It's 2 hours and 16 minutes. It was actually making a big commotion, a big headline that this is one of the longest running animated movies from a big studio. It's probably the longest running animated movie from a big studio. There's a bit of an asterisk.
Yes.
Because if we were to say longest animated movie period, officially I think there's an anime movie from Japan that's 3 hours.
I thought it was going to be The Incredibles. The recent one.
No, that's an hour and 50 something.
I don't know why.
This is 2:16. This is actually straddling the line. And I was commenting to her about yeah, even though I'm obviously in for it, children are children. They're going to start checking out by hour 30.
Yes.
And that last 45 minutes, either children or people with short attention spans are going to start fidgeting. And I'm like, okay, cool. There's the door. Because from this point forward, seeing how I've been telling you this, how much shorter attention spans are getting directors who are truly in control of the film or the integrity of the film, they're going to make longer movies.
Yes.
Oppenheimer's going to be 3 hours. Dune is probably going to be 3 hours. Dune Part 2 at least.
Yeah.
Recently, Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3, 2.5 hours. Flash is going to be 2.5 hours. So get ready. If you guys are not in it for the long haul, quite literally, that's your ass.
Do not go in with soda. Do not even go in with that thing.
But the second reason why I also say it's not just a kid's movie, it's also a family movie, is because retaining one other thing from the first movie is that heart. It's the family, and again, opening in a way where it's well, you got a sense of Miles. What about this other character? What about these other people that are still part of this web?
Than just, it's a kid's movie. No, there's themes like the real world, what happens when you grow up. What happens once you leave your parents' house, you gotta have to be ready for that. And you know what I mean? And it shows it shows the family. You know what I mean? And this is preparing him
Miles,
for
Rio, Jeff.
Yes, and this is preparing him for all these difficult things ahead of him that are going to happen. And they will happen. And it shows in the movie that it shows a lot of strong themes. Again, it's not a child's movie specifically, because there was a couple little themes here that were a little dark. And this is the part,
the first one.
This is the part where
people will die.
And this is the part where you were kind of saying, people who have ADHD or their attention span is too short, you cannot watch this too, because these parts right here were a little slow, but they were integral to the movie.
I'm going to throw you a curveball. Okay. You just said these little parts are slow because they're going to fidget. There were parts of this movie that I do think moved a little too fast. A little too frenetic.
Yes, that's where my brain was all.
In a very sensory kind of way.
Forgive me, I actually would not have minded another half hour because when it ended, I was like,
well, it ramps up towards the end. It ramps up towards the end. But there were some early moments where I'm like, in terms of the action, not even the talking, or actually maybe a little bit of talking. Well, like
the action was just.
There were a couple of moments where they were doing a little thing that is I know it's part of the Spider-Verse movies, this personality. I feel like there was probably less in the first one than here. Here they kind of doubled down in these moments where you either have Miles or some other character kind of walking, but hey, what do you think? Yeah, I'll get it right on it. Yeah, oh, like that, and then the camera's just going like this.
And it's like.
And it works in the favor of the first movie because we're getting a sense of that tone, sense of that personality that these movies have. Here, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to move on to Miles. I'm ready to move on to Gwen. But they were doing a little bit too much of this. Just a little. Like, it's not overly done, but it was just like, all right, I can kind of move. But then immediately some revelations happen where I'm like, we're in the third act. All right, we're entering the third act, and we're entering this moment where I'm like, oh, shit. But it does move fast, and then some of the action is greatly composed, greatly, put together. But there were times where, like I said, watching it in IMAX, I'm just like,
my eyes are so
it felt
tired.
like I had been playing a game for like 3 hours where, I'm doing good, but I'm starting I was trying to restrain myself from going like this with my eyes to rub them a little bit.
Yeah.
But eventually we got to a dialogue scene where it slowed down.
We couldn't even watch like our show on a wait drive or anything. Like usually we can. I could not. I couldn't.
You didn't want. That's why you didn't want to put Gordon and Ramsay.
I could not watch Hell's Kitchen. I could not because my eyes were tired. I was like, if I would do that, I was already kind of like my head was a little tender because it's just so many colors. Again, they're moving. Fast. It's necessary, and you expect it from this movie. You expect it from this movie because it's a superhero movie. Would you say at one point the frame rate moves a little faster?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And he has become a little stronger, so. He does move a little faster, I feel, in this movie than he did in the past one. And of course, he's grown. But it was just, my eyes are still tired as I speak.
That, and then the movie becomes self-aware that we're throwing in all these spider people. Not only the people that you're going to have in the background picking apart the Easter eggs of like who's included, and we'll try to say as many as we can remember in the spoiler section. But of course, here in the spoiler-free section, we have some of the important ones. Which were, I just want to make sure that the audio levels are good. So far, it's saying that that's fine. All right, let's hope so.
Are you sure about that?
The important ones were obviously Miguel, Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman, who's more of a 1.5 Spider people. Peter B. Parker does make it like I said, keeping it vague, makes an appearance. I think that's a better phrasing, an appearance. Gwen and Miles, Spider-Punk, and that's frankly about it as far as like your main folks.
Oh, what was that? Oh no, never mind. Forgive me.
So I said Jessica Drew and all that stuff, and I feel like they're all handled adequately, but I do think that they got the short end of the stick. Just a tidbit.
They weren't shown fully.
Yeah, and I feel like the movie is trying to say, well, we kind of get a pass because we got a third one coming, and at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but to me, that's like an equivalent of saying,
we'll do that later.
Well, we'll do that later, but I have the questions now.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? Like, I know answers are probably going to be coming, but I hate to make this a comparison, but it's probably like the best one that I could use to articulate this is going back to Deadpool 2, where he says, that's just lazy writing. And I'm like, but you still did the lazy writing.
You still did.
You can't, just calling it out doesn't excuse it. So it's not as egregious as that, but there are moments where I'm like, I know that Jessica Drew's backstory is probably going to be explored. Spider-Punk's going to be better explored in 3. Like I said, keeping it vague. But I am still over here like...
You want a little bit more.
Yeah, a little bit more where I'm like, maybe you should have pushed the extra 2.5 hours. Or maybe those action sequences shouldn't have gone so crazy so I can see Spider-Punk use his body language a little bit more. Even though he was still visually stimulating or audibly stimulating. And Jessica Drew with her motorcycle and all that stuff. Miguel, I did like that we saw a little bit of his backstory. A little bit, but again, I feel like we're going to get it better. And there's a lot of things taken from the trailer that we can apply to the movie and go like, yeah, it kind of planned out ish how we went down.
They showed enough. Yes.
Yeah, enough. But they showed enough in a way where we still walked away from the movie like you were having your moments like oh like you're going like that and leading up to the finale that we knew was going to end on a cliffhanger, but in what direction or who were going to be the power players, I'm like, yeah, this brought me back to Dead Man's Chest.
Oh my god.
The second Pirates were like, there it is. Even though I knew that there was going to be a cliffhanger, the style of cliffhanger and the way where all the chess pieces were put on the board, that's where I was like, all right, this is an interesting game, and I'm down to see the third one.
Yes, big time. This one, they left it hugely open. It was just, again, like the way it ended, I was like, oh, okay.
And it caught you off guard.
Yes, it did.
I was expecting it to cut to black at any point. But you were still like, we're getting more,
there was another, like, I don't know, the way it was, I didn't feel so long either. Like, yes, it was fast. Yes, it was a long movie. But I don't feel it moved so fast in the storyline. They got enough of what we needed.
Yeah, when I say that things were moving quickly, I really do mean technically.
Yes, just the rate.
Which still doesn't take away from the animation. They're still really on point. Like there's moments where I'm like, this is why the movie took so long. This is why it took like 5 years to get this thing out the can, because you're dealing with everything. So different many universes, and each universe has its own style. There's one characters in particular where every time that they were in their universe, I'm like, all right, they're doing something interesting with the watercolor. They're doing something interesting with the background where it's changing in every frame, and I'm like, people think of this shit. Yes. And there's some people that don't think about when putting together a movie like this, like that. And another character coming in, and they have their own style whenever they're moving, and then other things that are changing mediums, only because Sony has the rights. With that said, do I think this is better than the first? No, but that's kind of like this feels like an extension.
Yes.
Of the first one. I never felt like the movie was like, we're going to make this better than the first one. I never felt like that was its purpose. I felt like it was more like you start the center of the web and it's just expanding on the web. And you're just pulling back and saying, oh, again, the web is bigger. It's not better, but it's bigger.
Yeah. Yes, this is true. Yes.
But it never feels like it's worse than Into the Spider-Verse ever. I feel like this is just going to fall.
And then Dark World.
Or then Love and Thunder.
Yes, it wasn't like that. No,
definitely not. And so, because of that, I still prefer Into the Spider-Verse, but that's the key word right there, preference. It's going to fall down on purpose. So there's going to be some people who are probably going to love this better than Into the Spider-Verse, and I'll be like, I get it.
Of course, because
where do you sit?
I do prefer, like I said, you do prefer the first one, but in this second one, I liked it only because there's a little more darkness in it. Where is it? Oh, it's over here on my side. Moved it again. I think that there was a little bit more darkness in this one, a little bit more than the first one, and I did like it. It was kind of like
this is always the intention. Spider-Man 2, the game, is probably gonna be dark.
It was a little bit almost like The Empire Strikes Back in a way.
The
darkness of it.
The directors confirmed that.
Oh my god! See, I didn't even.
That they were like trying to take what worked in Empire Strikes Back in terms of making us go, well, then now what?
And the way it ended too was just like, you're like, what's gonna happen now?
I was like, okay, this is a pretty interesting ending. Like, and it doesn't feel like, there's this bigger plan. It feels internal. That's probably one of my biggest takeaways. That a lot of the things that were left hanging at the end, they're very internally based. It doesn't feel like. No, it's funny because the fate of the multiverse is still, in terms of like the technical stakes are out, but the internal stakes are much more interesting there at the end. So, I think I'll be giving this 8 out of 10. The first one's still a 9 out of 10. This one's a very high 8 out of 10. If it wasn't for, like I said, cramming just a little bit, it's cramming a little bit into those technical showcases to show all the different animation styles. Sometimes it's a little overly sensory overload. That's the word I was thinking.
I think
if it wasn't for those things and it was a bit just a little tighter, 9 out of 10, probably even 10.
I think I'd be in the same ballpark as you. 7.5, 8, only because of how it moved. a little bit fast. You know what I mean? The first one was a teeny bit more pace. This one, like I said, did move a little fast. And again, we left and you left a little tired. That's the only reason why. Otherwise, I near it almost like about a perfect date.
Perfect date?
Yes, perfect date. Like a really high perfect date right there. It's like right there. Only because of that. You know what I mean? The first one, like you said, you can't stop the first one. It's true. Because of how it started, even the way it flowed. This one, they were preparing you, I'm sure, for the third one that's coming up. And it just went, do-do-do-do-do. Let's go.
Pretty much. All right. We're going to try our best to record the spoiler section here real quick. Only because we're running out of time. But at the same time, any other closing thoughts for the spoiler-free section? Other than go see the movie if you haven't already made up your mind by now.
Have lots of patience. Be ready and just be ready for the ride because it's going to go fast. But at the same time, pay attention to everything that's going to happen throughout the movie.
Stop dropping your posters.
Oh, and any little...
If you get any free posters this weekend, either go put them in the car beforehand or just hang on to them. This goddamn lady kept dropping her posters next to me.
Really?
Yeah, I was about to throw it across the
So I'm going to make
theater.
such a people. I'm all, the whole time I need my popcorn. But yes. Now I want to watch the first one again.